Gentlemen, welcome back to another evening of uncomfortable truths. I see you there, the successful doctor who can't get a text back, the engineer whose wife left for the personal trainer, the professor watching his life savings evaporate in alimony payments while his ex-wife's Instagram shows her vacationing with a man 15 years his junior, the entrepreneur who built a 7-figure business only to find himself sleeping on a friend's couch after the divorce settlement. You built the bridges, you created the technologies, you maintained the systems that keep civilization afloat. You work the dangerous jobs, the thankless jobs, the jobs that require sacrifice of blood and time. And what has been your reward? Dismissal, replacement, betrayal. A society that simultaneously extracts your productivity while denigrating your nature. Tonight, we turn to Arthur Schopenhauer, perhaps philosophy's most unflinching observer of female nature. A man who, in the 1800s, articulated truths that many of you have painfully discovered through decades of lived experience. A man who saw through the veil of social niceties and romantic delusions to the cold machinery beneath. Arthur Schopenhauer, 1780-1860, was no ordinary philosopher. Born to a wealthy merchant family in Danzig, he witnessed his father's likely suicide at age 17, an event that would color his worldview permanently. Unlike the idealists of his time who constructed elaborate systems of metaphysical optimism, Schopenhauer developed a philosophy centered around what he termed will, the fundamental, driving life force that underpins all existence. This blind, insatiable will uses humans as mere vessels for its true purpose, perpetuation of the species. And here lies Schopenhauer's first insight into the dynamics between men and women. The will, he argued, manifests differently between the sexes. In men, it creates builders, thinkers, creators, beings capable of transcending mere biological imperatives through intellect and art. In women, according to Schopenhauer, it creates beings solely focused on securing genetic advantage and material provision, creatures wholly in service to nature's reproductive agenda. In his controversial essay on women, written in 1851, Schopenhauer presents his unvarnished assessment. Women are directly adapted to act as the nurses and educators of our early childhood, for the simple reason that they themselves are childish, foolish, and short-sighted. In a word, are big children all their lives, something intermediate between the child and the man. Uncomfortable? Perhaps. But ask yourself, how many times have you witnessed emotional reasoning trump logical analysis in your interactions with women? How many times have you been stunned by the childlike self-absorption in a partner you thought was your equal? How many times have you watched a grown woman, educated, successful by all external metrics, dissolve into tantrum-like behavior when confronted with an unpleasant truth or denied an immediate desire? Schopenhauer continues in his unflinching assessment. Neither for music, nor for poetry, nor for fine art have they really and truly any sense or susceptibility. It is a mere mockery if they make a pretense of it in order to assist their endeavor to please. Before you dismiss this as mere 19th century chauvinism, consider your own experiences. How many times have you watched a woman adopt and then discard interests, from literature to music to political causes, based entirely on who she was trying to attract or impress at that moment? The woman who suddenly developed a passionate interest in football when dating the athlete. The one who became an overnight expert in whatever obscure subject interested her new target. The chameleon-like quality that treats personal interests not as authentic expressions of self, but as accessories to be donned and discarded strategically. Gentlemen, I see you checking your phones, checking if she responded yet. She hasn't, has she? Despite having been active on social media just moments ago, despite the read receipt that appeared hours ago, despite the fact that no human being is so busy they can't spare 20 seconds to acknowledge another's existence, Schopenhauer would not be surprised. He wrote, "Women live, as it were, only in the present. They have their whole attention always absorbed by things immediately before their eyes." The philosopher identified what you've experienced countless times, the capability for immediate detachment, The apparent absence of loyalty that transcends circumstance, the brutal efficiency with which women can excise a man from their emotional universe once his utility has been exhausted. You've seen it in your own lives. You provide stability, intelligence, resources, all traditionally valuable male attributes. You worked overtime to pay for the apartment. You helped her through graduate school. You listened to her problems, offered solutions, stood by her during difficulties. Yet these qualities often generate indifference or contempt rather than attraction or respect. Meanwhile, as many of you have observed with growing disillusionment, the man offering nothing but chaos, danger, or superficial status receives enthusiastic attention. The drug dealer, the unemployed musician, the Instagram influencer with borrowed wealth, the man who treats her with casual disregard, the ex-boyfriend who repeatedly betrayed her trust but still warrants midnight text responses while you, the reliable one, stare at an unacknowledged message. This is precisely what Schopenhauer was articulating when he wrote, "Women are by nature meant to obey, because they need a lord and master. They need someone to possess them." What he's identifying isn't about literal obedience, but about the paradoxical nature of female attraction. Often strongest not toward the man who offers respect and provision, but toward the man who demonstrates higher value through indifference or unpredictability. The man who is himself a complete ecosystem, rather than an extension of her needs. Let's contemplate the phenomenon you've all witnessed. OnlyFans, sugar dating websites and Instagram models monetizing their sexuality while simultaneously declaring themselves empowered. The cognitive dissonance required to sell intimate access to one's body while claiming liberation would have fascinated Schopenhauer as a prime example of reasoning subordinated to self-interest. Schopenhauer wrote with characteristic bluntness, "The fundamental fault of the female character is that it has no sense of justice." This seems harsh until you consider the double standards many of you have encountered. The woman who demands a man over 6 feet tall while calling it body shaming if a man prefers a woman under 150 pounds. The partner who expects unlimited emotional support while offering none in return. The ex-wife who takes half your assets despite contributing nothing to their acquisition. The social media influencer who decries objectification while building her entire brand on provocative imagery. Schopenhauer continues with what modern psychologists might call an assessment of moral development. This is because women, due to the weakness of their reasoning powers, are less able to understand universal principles. What he's identifying is not intellectual inferiority, but a fundamentally different moral framework. Where a man might ask, "Is this fair?" a woman asks, "Does this serve my interests?" The reasoning follows the emotion, not the other way around. The justification comes after the decision, retrofitted to support the predetermined conclusion. And so we arrive at the modern dating marketplace, where many of you find yourselves invisible unless you offer extraordinary wealth, status, or physical attributes. You build the dating apps, yet find yourselves swiped left. You finance the lifestyle, yet watch her fantasize about the tattooed bartender. You provide the security that enables her freedom, yet that very security becomes the source of her contempt. Dating app statistics confirm what many of you already know. The top 10% of men receive approximately 90% of female attention. The average man has become functionally invisible in digital dating spaces. Your authentic qualities, your kindness, your intelligence, your potential as a partner, remain unexpressed in an algorithmic environment that reduces you to a series of photographs and a height measurement. Society tells you that women are the more empathetic sex, the more compassionate sex, the more nurturing sex. Yet how many of you have witnessed the exact opposite? The casual cruelty with which a woman can dismiss a man who no longer serves her purposes. The complete absence of empathy for male suffering. The willingness to destroy a man's reputation with accusations that, true or false, can never be fully erased. Schopenhauer observed, "Women are characterized by their constant dissimulation and an instinctive capacity for deception." His language is harsh, but the essence he identifies is the capacity for strategic self-presentation, what evolutionary psychologists now call female intrasexual competition. The smile to your face while undermining you to others. The performative public persona that bears no resemblance to private behavior. The relationship history rewritten to cast herself as the perpetual victim rather than an active participant. This is not malice, but strategy. The same evolutionary pressures that created male strength created female cunning. Both are adaptations to environmental challenges, neither inherently more moral than the other. For those of you who did marry, Schopenhauer offers perhaps his most bitter medicine. Marrying means to halve one's rights and double one's duties. How many of you nodded just now? How many recognize the asymmetry in your own marriages? The expectation that you provide financially while also taking on traditionally female domestic duties. The requirement that you remain conventionally masculine in ways that benefit her while abandoning masculinity whenever it inconveniences her. The demand for strength coupled with the demand for vulnerability, but only the right kind of vulnerability, expressed in the right measure at the right moment. Schopenhauer saw marriage as a trap engineered by nature to ensure species propagation. It is only the man whose intellect is clouded by his sexual impulses that could give the name of the fair sex to that undersized, narrow-shouldered, broad-hipped and short-legged race. Crude, certainly. But how many of you have looked back on a relationship and wondered what blinded you to the reality that was apparent to all your friends? How many of you mortgaged your freedom for physical beauty, only to discover the catastrophic price? How many of you were guided by the little head rather than the big one, only to spend decades paying for a moment's intoxication? Schopenhauer continues, marriage is a trap which nature sets for us, and the trap is carefully baited. The female capacity for strategic self-presentation, what evolutionary psychologists now call misrepresentation of reproductive value, is precisely what Schopenhauer identified when he noted, only a male intellect clouded by the sexual drive could call the stunted, narrow-shouldered, broad-hipped and short-legged sex the fair sex. The philosopher here is describing the biological reality that male sexual attraction is fundamentally visual and oriented toward fertility indicators. The cosmetics industry exploits this ruthlessly. Look at dating profiles where filters, angles, and outright deception are not just common, but expected. Look at the makeup industry, a multi-billion-dollar enterprise dedicated to creating an illusion of youth and fertility. Look at the body positivity movement that celebrates obesity in women, while men receive no such dispensation from physical standards. Schopenhauer would simply nod and reference the power of the will, the blind biological imperative that drives men toward the reproductive potential that female appearance signals, regardless of the actual person beneath. Many of you watching have experienced not just rejection, which is natural and inevitable, but contemptuous dismissal. The read receipt with no response. The date who was clearly disgusted by your appearance despite seeing your photos. The partner who stayed only until a better option emerged. The wife who began planning her exit the moment your career faced a setback. This is the particular cruelty that Schopenhauer identified when he wrote, "The natural feeling between men is mere indifference, but between women it is actual enmity." Replace women with sexual competitors, and you have a profound insight into female social dynamics that explains much of what you've witnessed. The woman who claimed to be seeking a nice guy, while consistently choosing otherwise, wasn't lying. She was competing with other women for the highest status man available, with status defined primarily by how other women value him. Your actual qualities, your kindness, intelligence, loyalty, are secondary to her perception of how other women perceive you. This is why the married man suddenly becomes attractive. This is why fame instantly creates female attention, regardless of the man's other attributes. This is why women will tolerate extraordinary mistreatment from a man who other women desire, while treating with contempt the devoted man who lacks external validation. You have been judged not on your merits, but on your market value in a sexual economy you never designed, one that evolved over millions of years to perpetuate genes, not to create individual happiness. Perhaps the most painful insight Schopenhauer offers concerns female fidelity, or rather, its conditional nature. He writes, It is only the man whose intellect is clouded by his sexual urge that could give that stunted, narrow-shouldered, broad-hipped and short-legged race the name of the fair sex. Beyond the crude physical description lies a deeper observation about male delusion. The faithful woman, Schopenhauer would argue, is not experiencing temptation and choosing loyalty. She is simply being practical about her options. The moment a definitively superior alternative presents itself, previous commitments become irrelevant. This explains the phenomenon so many of you have witnessed. The woman who seemed perfectly content in the relationship until suddenly, without warning, she wasn't. The woman who swore undying devotion on Monday and was in another man's bed by Friday. The decades-long marriage abandoned the moment a more attractive option appeared. It's not personal, it's pragmatic. The female imperative to secure the best possible genetics and resources for offspring doesn't accommodate sentiment when a clear upgrade presents itself. The modern manifestation appears in divorce statistics, over 70% initiated by women, and in the phenomenon of monkey branching, where a woman secures her next relationship before ending her current one. It appears in the woman who stays through your struggles only to leave once you achieve success, securing through divorce the lifestyle she could now never achieve with a new man of similar status. Perhaps the most devastating insight Schopenhauer offers is this: the unconditional love you seek, the love your mother may have given you, the love you believed possible in a romantic partner, is an illusion when sought from a woman who is not your mother. Female love is fundamentally conditional. It is an exchange, not a gift. It is based on what you provide, whether resources, genetics, status, or security, not who you are. This is why the man who loses his job so often loses his wife shortly thereafter. This is why illness, injury, or financial setback so frequently precedes female abandonment. This is why your moments of vulnerability or weakness so often became the beginning of the end of your relationships. Schopenhauer observed that women are dependent not on strength, but on craft. The ultimate craft is the illusion of unconditional love, the promise that keeps men producing, providing, and protecting even when their own needs go perpetually unmet. Now, gentlemen, we reach the crucial question: what is to be done with these insights? Schopenhauer himself chose a life of solitude with his poodles, famously saying, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. For it is only when he is alone that he is really free." But complete withdrawal is not the only rational response. Some of you have found a different path, understanding female nature without bitterness, accepting evolutionary realities without resentment, engaging strategically rather than naively. Schopenhauer offers this wisdom: the two enemies of human happiness are pain and boredom. Perhaps the solution lies in building a life so meaningful, so full of purpose, that female validation becomes irrelevant. Not through bitterness, but through genuine self-sufficiency. A life where you are not running from pain through distraction or numbing, nor suffering from the existential boredom that drives so many men to sell their autonomy for female companionship. The greatest revenge is not anger, but indifference. Not isolation, but selective engagement from a position of strength. The man who truly understands female nature is not bitter, he is free. Consider Marcus Aurelius, who wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Or in our context, the best response to female nature is not to become as manipulative or amoral as you perceive women to be, but to transcend the need for female validation entirely. Build wealth not to attract women, but because it gives you options. Develop strength not to impress women, but because it makes you capable. Create art not to win female approval, but because it gives your life meaning. Cultivate male friendships not as a substitute for female companionship, but as a superior form of connection. In short, live for yourself and let women be the occasional dessert rather than the main course of your existence. What Schopenhauer intuitively grasped, modern evolutionary psychology has confirmed through empirical study. Female sexual selection is hypergamous, oriented towards securing the highest status male genes available, while simultaneously securing the most reliable resources. These imperatives sometimes conflict, creating the classic dichotomy of the alpha fucks, beta bucks phenomenon that so many of you have experienced firsthand. The wife who had wild sexual adventures with unemployed musicians in her youth, but offers you, the stable provider, only reluctant intimacy. The girlfriend who claimed to need time from your relationship, only to begin immediately dating a wealthier, more socially connected man. The fiancée who maintained close contact with her ex-boyfriend throughout your relationship, only for you to discover their ongoing physical affair. These are not moral failings, but strategic adaptations, no different in evolutionary terms than a man's visual orientation toward youth and fertility indicators. The difference is that male nature is constantly pathologized, while female nature is explained away, justified, or denied outright. Gentlemen, Schopenhauer's perspective is dark, perhaps too dark, perhaps colored by his own failed relationships and personal bitterness, perhaps lacking the nuance that comes from recognizing individual variation within broad evolutionary patterns. But within his philosophical pessimism lies a liberating truth. The game may be rigged, but you are not required to play. You can choose to understand female nature without being controlled by your desire for female approval. You can recognize the evolutionary psychology at work without becoming its victim. You can engage with women not from neediness but from abundance, not seeking what they can provide but offering what you choose to give, with clear-eyed awareness of the exchange taking place. The dating marketplace has indeed changed, often to your disadvantage. The legal system governing marriage and divorce indeed creates perverse incentives. The cultural narratives around masculinity have indeed become contradictory and often toxic. But you, educated, accomplished men that you are, have always adapted to hostile environments. You've solved more complex problems than this. Schopenhauer offers one final insight worth considering. All truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. The truths we've discussed tonight about female nature are currently somewhere between stages 1 and 2 in public discourse. But you, gentlemen, have already reached stage 3 through painful personal experience. Now the question becomes, what will you build with this knowledge? Will you use it to spiral into resentment and misogyny? Or will you use it to construct a life of genuine autonomy and purpose, one where women are a pleasant addition rather than a desperate need? As always, the choice is yours. Until next time, gentlemen, may your path be guided by wisdom rather than wishful thinking. May you build a life worthy of your potential rather than worthy of female approval. And may you find the strength to see reality as it is, not as you wish it to be.